From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! We're on the road in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
We are very pleased that the decent countries of this world, like the United States and many European countries and Australia and Canada, are not participating, and this is the right message.
The United Nations World Conference on Racism opens today in Geneva, but a growing number of Western countries are joining the United States and Israel in boycotting the talks. We'll go to Geneva. Then New Mexico has become the second state in the country to repeal the death penalty. We'll speak with a New Mexico state representative and a leading anti-death penalty activist. They've just returned from Rome, where they were with Governor Richardson, who met with the Pope. Rome then commemorated the repeal with a special lighting of the Colosseum. And we'll be joined by Father John Deere. He's been arrested more than 75 times for acts of civil disobedience against war and nuclear weapons. Last year, Archbishop Desmond Tutu nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. He'll talk about his actions at Los Alamos. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A footnote in one of the newly declassified torture memos has revealed that CIA interrogators used waterboarding far more than had been previously reported. In August 2002, the CIA waterboarded Abu Zubaydah 83 times. The CIA also used waterboarding 183 times in March of 2003 against Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. In 2007, a former CIA officer publicly claimed that Abu Zubaydah had undergone waterboarding for only 36 seconds before agreeing to tell everything he knew. Meanwhile, on Sunday, White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel said the Obama administration opposes any effort to prosecute CIA interrogators who engaged in torture, as well as Bush administration officials who authorized the use of torture. Rahm Emanuel made the comment in an interview on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos.
He believes that people in good faith were operating with the guidance they were provided. They shouldn't be
But what about those who devised the policy?
Yeah, but those who devised the policy, he believes that they were should not be prosecuted either. And it's not the place that we go, as he said in that letter, and I would really recommend people look at the full statement, not the letter, the statement. In that second paragraph, this is not a time for retribution. It's a time for reflection. It is not a time to use our energy and our time in looking back and in a sense of anger and retribution.
The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Manfred Nowak, has said President Obama is in violation of international law for declining to prosecute CIA agents who use torture. Nowak said the U.S. is bound by the UN Convention Against Torture, which requires prosecution in all cases in which there's evidence of torture. Prosecution of Bush administration officials may still take place in Spain. On Friday, Spanish judge Baltasar Garzon defied Spanish prosecutors and kept alive a criminal investigation into the actions of 6 high-ranking Bush administration officials, including former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales and former Justice Department Attorney Jay Bybees. This comes as calls are increasing for Bybees' impeachment as a federal judge. During an interview on Fox News Sunday, Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri questioned whether Bybees should be serving on the federal bench after approving the use of torture.
What's scary to me, Chris, is one of them got a lifetime appointment on the federal bench. Yikes. You know, a lawyer that's responsible for this kind of advice that clearly went too far in terms of stretching what our law is. It worries me that he's sitting on the federal bench right now.
The United Nations Conference on Racism has opened in Geneva, but the United States and several other nations are boycotting the conference over concerns the conference will criticize Israel. In 2001, the U.S. and Israel walked out of the UN Racism Conference in South Africa after Arab states sought to define Zionism as racism. During the opening talks, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said racism, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, need to be tackled. We'll have more on the conference after headlines. President Obama's returned to Washington after attending the Summit of the Americas in Trinidad and Tobago, where he vowed to repair relations with Latin America. At the summit, Obama briefly met with the Venezuelan president, Hugo Chavez, who gave Obama a copy of Eduardo Galeano's book, The Open Veins of Latin America, 5 Centuries of the Pillage of a Continent. At a news conference on Sunday, Obama responded to criticism of him for shaking Chavez's hand.
It's unlikely that as a consequence of me shaking hands or having a polite conversation with Mr. Chavez that we are endangering the strategic interests of the United States. I don't think anybody can find any evidence that that would do so. Even within this imaginative crowd, I think you would be hard-pressed to paint a scenario in which U.S. interests would be damaged as a consequence of us having a more constructive relationship with Venezuela.
On Cuba, Obama acknowledged that the U.S. policy of the past 50 years has failed. Obama's comment came days after he eased travel restrictions on Cuban Americans. On Sunday, he called on Cuban President Raul Castro to take some steps if he wants to start a dialogue with the United States.
And the fact that you had Raul Castro say he's willing to have his government discuss with ours not just issues of lifting the embargo, but issues of human rights, political prisoners, that's a sign of progress. And so we're going to explore and see if we can make some further steps. There are some things that the Cuban government could do. They could release political prisoners.
A secret Iranian court has sentenced Iranian-American journalist Roxana Saberi to 8 years in prison for allegedly spying for the United States. Saberi had worked as a freelancer for the BBC, for NPR, and other outlets. Her father, Reza Saberi, spoke to NPR on Saturday.
She is very weak and frail. The last time we saw, and she wanted to go on hunger strike, but we persuaded her not to do so. And after this, most probably she will, even though when we visit her, we want to ask her not to do so. But she is quite depressed about this matter, and she wants to go on hunger strike. And if she does, she's so frail, it can be very dangerous to her health.
The Obama administration has demanded Saberi be released. On Sunday, the Iranian president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, sent a letter to Tehran's chief prosecutor instructing him to personally ensure that Saberi be allowed to offer a full defense during her appeal. U.S. drones have carried out another strike inside Pakistan, killing as many as 8 people in the Waziristan region. The news in Pakistan said all the dead were civilians. However, other reports said the strike targeted a home used by al-Qaeda. Israeli forces have killed another unarmed Palestinian during a protest against the Israel separation wall in the West Bank. 39-year-old Basim Abu Rahman died on Friday after he was shot with a high-velocity tear gas canister. Abu Rahman is the 3rd Palestinian to be killed in the past 3 months alone during protests against the wall. Congressional Quarterly is reporting Democratic Congress member Jane Harman of California was overheard in 2005 on an NSA wiretap, speaking with a suspected Israeli agent. During the call, Harman reportedly said she would lobby the Justice Department to reduce espionage-related charges against 2 officials of AIPAC, the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee. In exchange for Harman's help, the suspected Israeli agent reportedly pledged to help lobby Nancy Pelosi to appoint Harman chair of the Intelligence Committee after the 2006 elections. The conversation is said to have been picked up on a court-approved NSA wiretap directed at alleged Israel covert action operatives in Washington. Congressional Quarterly reports then Attorney General Alberto Gonzales decided to stop the probe of Harman because he wanted Harman to be able to help defend the administration's secret domestic spy program that the New York Times was about to expose. In Sri Lanka, more than 35,000 civilians have fled the last area controlled by the Tamil Tigers as the Sri Lankan military intensifies its assault on the separatist group. The United Nations says up to 100,000 civilians are trapped in a sliver of coastal jungle controlled by the Tamil Tigers and are living in dire humanitarian conditions. Channel 4 in Britain and Al Jazeera have aired some footage from the area that's been closed off to journalists. The video, which was shot by an aid group, showed scores of civilian victims killed last week in fighting. An estimated 4,500 civilians have been killed in Sri Lanka in the last 3 months.